Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday. I hope everyone is having a great weekend so far, and hopefully you guys are having enough time to basically wrap up the private pilot class that ended last Friday. So the way that this works is we'll go through basically the test questions that I am seeing most people miss. We'll be able to answer any questions that you guys may or may not have. For those that have specific questions, like Brent that I see, go ahead and throw the, if it's a topic, you can throw it in there. If you know a specific test question that you need assistance on, just throw the entire test question in there with the potential answers. We can go through it. Other than that, I've seen probably about 100 people so far get their endorsements over the week here. So keep pushing forward. It's still available until Wednesday, unless you are a lifetime member. I also want to address, I did see this in the Facebook group today. So remember, you guys have access to the Facebook group. I think there's about 7,600 people in there currently. You guys are asking a lot of great questions. One of them that came up was, well, what should I study to take the final exam? And of course, 20 people came up with 20 different answers. One of the reasons why we created this course was we wanted everything to be in one place, but there are a lot of resources for you to basically prepare for your written exam. The one thing that I would recommend to you is basically go back to the practice quizzes and then also go back to your practice test. So I was sitting in your shoes 5-6 years ago, and I've kind of been through that same process. And, as pilots, we collect a lot of stuff. Okay. And what I mean by that is somebody's going to tell you to go buy this and go buy that. Just want to throw that out there that, I'm looking at the pile of stuff because I was trying to make a point here, but someone said before you're written, read the P-hack. Got it. Check. Roger. Okay. Then someone said, you know what, the ASA test prep book, you can see how old this is an excellent resource to go ahead and practice. Got that. Then for the private pilot, someone said, get the King School. Check. Okay. Great program, by the way. I'm not knocking any of these. I think all the programs are fantastic out there. Then someone said, get the ASA private pilot virtual test prep. Check. Then someone eventually said, get the Gleim version. Check. So there's a lot of different companies. There's a lot of different products. The reality is that no matter whichever program you do, we're all teaching to the same standards, right? So we all have the same information. It's really the way that we convey the information. I think these other programs are fantastic as well. So use what suits your learning style. But don't feel obligated to go buy every single one of these. This is a habit. I have the exact same thing for instrument and commercial. And if I were to do it again from day one, I know the author that I like, and I would just kind of stick with basically that single, company throughout my training. So, but you guys just need to study the test questions moving forward, and then you guys will be good to go. Okay. All right. So, this is going to be quick and dirty. I don't want to spend too much time. I don't want to take away your weekend. This is going to be just to answer any questions you might have. I'll remind you of the course updates really quickly. We'll go through the FAA test taking strategies. I will go through about 13 FAA test questions that I'm seeing the most missed out of this last class, which is for the private pilot. For those that are throwing the test questions in there, like Catherine and the rest of you, we'll come back to that. We'll scooter back to that at the very, very end here, but just keep throwing them in the chat and we'll go through them one by one. We'll stay here as long as we need to. All right, so final thing, just as a reminder, if you guys are interested in the Instrument Pilot Ground School, it is going to be not this Monday, but the following Monday. That should actually say the 31st. It should be Memorial Day, May 31st. Through June 25th, and it's 4 classes, 12 weeks, same schedule we always do. You guys can sign up for that on the Facebook group or on our website, thecheckride.prep.com/events. And then for those of you that are in our private pilot ground school currently that just ended this last Friday, you guys have until Wednesday to wrap up any last minute tests or quizzes to get your endorsement, unless you are a lifetime member. If you are a lifetime member, remember those dates do not apply. And very simply, during the Memorial Week, it is still 40% off, so you can find it if you do want to participate in that. All right, so that is really it for my announcements. We're going to go ahead and move on into your test taking strategies. If anybody here remembers college or high school, these are basically the exact same ones that we would go through if you guys were taking maybe an ACT or SAT exam. So a couple things that you always want to do is make sure that you read the entire question. I know that kind of seems absurd, but a lot of times we saw this with some of the test questions in the class over the last couple weeks, specifically in the performance, right? Remember those horrible density altitude, tables that we looked at in those questions? A couple of them asked, what is the density altitude? And then there was another test question that said, what is the pressure altitude? So don't assume one thing or another. Always try to read the entire test question and then look at whatever the potential answers are as well. Also, try to answer it in your mind and then try to review whatever the potential answers are. This is going to help you, prevent yourself from basically talking yourself out of the correct answer. Usually the first answer is going to be the correct answer. If you are not sure, if you're just kind of staring at the page and you're coming down to your last couple of test questions, try to eliminate any known wrong answers. So, at this point, we're basically going to try to improve your odds. Normally, you've got about a 33.5% chance if you randomly guessed. If we could get rid of one of those wrong answers, then at least we have a 50-50 chance moving forward. And this is just using the process of elimination. So cross out all the answers that you know are incorrect and focus on the remaining answers. Not only does this strategy save time, it also greatly increases your likelihood of selecting the correct answer. I'll also throw this out there as well. Don't leave any test questions blank. It will, at the very, very end, it will basically ask you, are you sure you want to end the test? Just make sure that every test question is answered. Whether you know it or not, take a best guess or educated guess when you're basically reviewing the test questions on the FAA exam. Continuing on, we also want to go ahead and select the best answer. Back one here. Always select the best answer. Sometimes they're going to sound very, very good. And the test question I'm referring to is going back to what is the purpose of, let's say, oil? Lubrication, or is it basically to basically displace the heat of the engine? The correct answer is actually removing the heat of the engine or displacing the heat, but lubrication is also a decent answer, although that's not the best answer when we're looking at it. So oftentimes when we look at these test questions, the answers will seem correct, but there's going to be typically a best answer to those for that basically the FAA is going to be looking for. Read every answer option and then only answer after you're done with basically looking at all the potentials for yourself. Okay. Answer the questions first. This is something that we all do. I think we try to blast off as soon as we sit down for the FAA exam. We go through every single test question. We answer all the ones that we know really quickly, and then we're left with the 10 or 20 harder ones that we didn't really know, or maybe it required some type of computation, like maybe it was a performance or something along those lines. So then we go back to them the second time. Anytime that there's seemingly two correct answers, which is actually very rare on these exams, but if in the event it is, then you want to select the option all of the above, and then that's going to be probably the correct choice as well. Then finally, we also have the FAA testing supplement. So you guys have access to the testing supplement. We've put this in every single lesson. You can go on the FAA website, you can download it. This will be the exact same testing supplement that you will get the physical version of when you sit down for your FAA exam. I would highly recommend just thumbing through it, seeing what's in there. The one thing that I'll point out is there is an appendix in there. So the appendix can help you actually answer some of those FAA test questions, and we'll look at the first one here and see if we can kind of prove that point to you. There are some legends in there. There's a legend for the chart supplement. You have the legend for your aeronautical chart as well. The other thing that you're also going to find in there is different weather charts, and this is the one that I pulled, figure 15 for the TAFs. If you guys know how to read the TAFs, the METARs, the PIREPs, and the weather reports that are inside of these testing supplements, that's about 90% of the potential test questions that they're going to ask you when it comes to these written reports. So I would encourage you to basically go through each one of these and make sure that you are comfortable, like this one here, the TAF for Memphis and for Oklahoma City, making sure that you are actually comfortable reading through and knowing what all the symbology and the codification means from top to bottom there. All right. So here are the 13, I believe, 13 or 14 most missed FAA test questions here. And when we look at these, remember to please answer in the poll. If you are on Facebook or on YouTube, just write down the answer. Don't give away the potential answer to your fellow students. So first one, and we're going to go through these pretty quickly. I'll give you guys about 30, 40 seconds on each one. So referring to the chart on the right-hand side, the navigation facility at Dallas-Fort Worth International is that going to be a VOR, a VORTAC, or a VOR DME? And if you guys are asking about I'm trying to see what review you guys are talking about. The review is really the first couple days of the instrument class. So that will be Monday, Wednesday, and part of Friday. So if you want to sit in, you're more than welcome to. All right, got about half the class in so far. Take a best guess, Brent. If you're unsure, take a best guess there. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. We've got about 6% with A, 20% with B, and the majority of the class with C. So when you look at DFW here, we are specifically going to be looking at this and trying to figure out what type of VOR this is. And you need to basically be able to identify it based upon the codification that we see there, the design and the shape of it. The correct answer is actually going to be C. It is a VOR DME, so it does have distance measuring equipment capability. And this is one of these test questions where you're going to notice that it says refer to figure 25, area 5, right? I've done the work for you. I've already pulled out figure 25. I zoomed in a little bit. Here is area 5 where the airport is located. But if you do not remember what are the different symbols for a VOR, VORTAC, or a VOR DME, this is where it's helpful to remember that you guys have on page 1 of your testing supplement, you guys have an aeronautical chart legend just like this, okay? So in the event you forgot, I've highlighted this section right here. You guys will notice that you've got your VOR on the first line, your VORTAC on the second line, and then your VOR DME is basically the one that has the square with that little shape that looks kind of like that. Horrible drawing there. But that is what a VOR DME is. So that's the reason why I'm saying I always like to give you guys this opportunity to take a look at the testing supplement, understand that the test question is never going to refer to the legend, but there are some legends at the very beginning of your testing supplement, which can actually help you answer some of these questions in the event you get stuck like that. Okay. All right. Good job, everyone. Let's go ahead and push on and moving on to weather here. And these are not in any specific order. Referring to the figure at the bottom, that is figure 15. The only cloud type forecast in TAF reports is it going to be A, nimbostratus, B, cumulonimbus, or C, scattered cumulus? Copy that, Brent. I will write that one down as well. All right, got about half the class in. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Apologize if I cut anybody off here. You can actually do this without the figure. The figure is included though. But the main thing is that the only type of cloud that we actually report in the TAF, the most important one, is actually going to be the cumulonimbus cloud. And we've got about 61% of the class with the correct answer. If you actually look at line number 1, the very, very tail end of line number 1, this is the codification for it right there. It's CB. So what we have is overcast at 800 with cumulonimbus clouds. So obviously some type of thunderstorm is occurring here. And then we also have the thunderstorm with rain. So cumulonimbus is the only one that we actually report. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one as well. Keep in mind with some of these, the test questions are longer than what the system allows me to add in. So if you look at the vote function and the test question is cut off, just refer to the one on the screen that has the full text for it. During a cross-country flight, you picked up rime ice, which you estimate is a ½ an inch thick on the leading edge of the wings. You are now below the clouds at 2,000 feet AGL and are approaching your destination airport under VFR. Visibility under the clouds is more than 10 miles. Wind at the destination airport are 8 knots right down the runway. And the surface temperature is 3 degrees Celsius. You decide to, is it A, use a faster than normal approach and landing speed, B, approach and land at your normal speed since the ice is not thick enough to have any noticeable effect, or C, fly your approach slower than normal to lessen the wind chill effect and break up the ice. All right, you got about half the class in. Evan from Alaska, the final exam opened up on Friday, so it's been available to you since Friday. So feel free to take it when you are caught up. We got about 80%. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this one. So this we've got about 50% with A, couple people on B, and the balance of class with C. The correct answer is going to be A. If you were to pick up any type of icing, obviously you guys can't fly through the clouds, but for whatever reason, maybe you encountered freezing rain or something that basically ended up sticking to the aircraft. And there's a couple different types of ice. Rime ice is one of them. Rime is kind of a milky, it's not very opaque. And it can collect to your aircraft. If you had a ½ an inch thick, that is a ton of ice. For the most part, just to kind of give you an idea, if you go out to the airplane on a cold morning and there's frost on the wing, you need to get rid of all the frost before you guys take off. The frost and pretty much most, even the lightest coating of ice can actually reduce your lift by 40 to 50%. So you have to make sure all that stuff is off the airplane prior to doing it. In the event you picked it up, remember that because the ice is basically creating additional weight and it's also spoiling lift, that means you're going to have a higher stall speed, which means you're going to need to be moving a little bit quicker than normal. So if your approach speed was, let's say, 65 or 75, whatever it may be, depending on your airplane, you're going to want to go a little bit quicker than that in order to avoid stalling in all regards. Okay, so correct answer is A. You do want to use a faster than normal speed. Okay. All right, moving on, we're going to talk about TRSAs. So TRSA service in the Terminal Radar Program provides what? Is it A, for IFR separation, it's 1,000 feet vertically and 3 miles laterally between all aircraft? B, warning to pilots when their aircraft are in unsafe proximity to terrain, obstructions, or other aircraft? Or C, sequencing and separation for participating VFR aircraft? Answering a couple of your questions, Nico or ACO, the final for lifetime members, it's whenever you guys want. There is no closed or due date or anything. John, typically on the Wednesday, we normally say noon. The reality is we usually close it around just before midnight on Wednesday, towards the end of the day. Try to provide some type of buffer. All right, got about 60% of the class in so far. You're good, Travis. I think we always say noon, but the reality is right around, you and I know it's somewhere around midnight. All right, about 80% in. Wait for a few stragglers here. Yes, Q&A is recorded, and these test questions were pulled specifically from our last class, so we just looked at the most missed test questions. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Apologize if I cut off anybody, but we have about 75% of the class with the correct answer. A couple people on A and B there. So the TRSA, right? Remember, the TRSA is the Terminal Radar Service Advisory Area. They're kind of like an older version of a Class Charlie airspace. And the correct answer in terms of what it provides is it provides sequencing and separation for basically all participating VFR aircraft, and then obviously IFR aircraft as well. A and B, they're not going to really, those are kind of irrelevant here because this is one of the areas that if you want it and you're a VFR aircraft, they're going to give it to you. They will provide you with the sequencing and separation services within this, within whatever boundary it's held within. Okay. All right, moving on to risk management here. Risk management as part of the aeronautical decision-making ADM process relies on which features to reduce the risks associated with each flight? Is it A, risk management as, I don't know why that's a duplicate. Sorry, I must have fat fingered that in. Here's your process of elimination. So you get a 50-50 shot here. Is it going to be B, situational awareness, problem recognition, and good judgment, or C, the mental process of analyzing all information in a particular situation and making a timely decision on what action to take? Okay, so there is obviously a 50-50 shot now, so hopefully we all get it. How close are these questions to the FAA questions? So the FAA testing database is not a public testing database. They actually closed the availability to or access to the public to all their test questions back in 2000, 2001. So these are basically the best guess scenarios, but most people have told us and came back they're about 95% going to be matching the FAA versions. So, and we regularly update them as well. All right, got about half the class in. You're welcome, Joel. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. We've got about nobody with A, which is great. We've got 60% with B and 40% with C. So the correct answer here is where we actually have the majority of the class with the correct answer. It is going to be B. It's situational awareness, problem recognition, and good judgment. So when we look at risk management, it's part of the decision-making process, which does rely on, as we said, situational awareness, problem recognition, and good judgment to reduce risks associated with each flight. Okay? That is correct, John. If you remember, then there is no deadline for you, sir. All right, moving on, we're going to look at this one. This is one that usually gets most people for some reason. So let me go ahead and open this one up. Which is normally prohibited when operating a restricted category civil aircraft? Is it A, flight under instrument flight rules or IFR, B, flight over a densely populated area, or C, flight within Class Delta airspace? So restricted category civil aircraft is one that's basically certified that way. So most of us are going to be flying a normal category aircraft, and then the other variation of that is a acrobatic aircraft. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this. We've got about 79% of the class with the correct answer here. So correct answer is going to be B. It's flight over a densely populated airplane. I'm sorry, I have a populated area there. Had airplane on my mind. So there's three different things you can't do if you're in a restricted category airplane like this. Number one, it's what we have on the screen there, which is they don't want you flying over densely populated areas. They also don't want you to fly in a congested airway, nor do they want you to fly near a busy airport where any type of passenger transport operations are going to be conducted. Okay, so I think I saw one of the questions that I just addressed with Nico out there. So we had what is going to be considered a restricted category civil aircraft. It's basically the way that it's certified. So I don't have any off the top of my mind here. I could probably Google some. But when you go into the airplane and you actually look at the registration certificate, you'll see, actually the airworthiness certificate that is, you'll see how it's actually certified. Majority of your training aircraft are going to be normal. There's a couple out there that are acrobatic, and then there's a couple that are also restricted within this category as well. Okay. All right, continuing on, we're going to switch gears and look at the weather question here. This one should be pretty easy, hopefully. If the temperature dew point spread is small and decreasing, and the temperature is 62 degrees, what type of weather is most likely to develop? Is it A, freezing precipitation, B, thunderstorms, or C, fog or low clouds? All right, and I did a fast Google search on special airworthiness restricted categories. So some special purpose operations include agriculture, so basically spraying, dusting, seeding, forest and wildlife conservation, aerial surveying, patrolling, weather control such as cloud seeding, aerial advertising. These are a couple that the FAA have on their website there. So it's going to be also some type of operational issue. I got about half the class in. All right, let's take a look at it. 92% of you have the correct answer. The correct answer is going to be, not that one, but it will be C. It is fog or low clouds. So remember, anytime that we have a small spread of the temperature dew point spread that we see up there, typically what we usually discuss is within 5 to 6 degrees or less, and it's decreasing, then we are most likely to end up with fog or low clouds, okay? I think we had 1 or 2 people with A and B up there. So A is going to be incorrect just because precipitation will not freeze at a temperature of 62 degrees. So that's the reason why it's not cold enough to get to that point. And B is also incorrect because the temperature dew point spread does not directly relate to the development of thunderstorms. Remember, the ingredients for a thunderstorm are going to be an unstable lapse rate, some type of source of moisture, and an uplifting force. All right. All right, moving on, we want you to go ahead and read through this right here. What is the wind shear forecast in the following TAF? And then you have your 3 potential answers at the bottom. From my understanding, Marisol, cloud seeding, what was it again? I could have sworn it was something to do with the creation of clouds and rain, basically trying to manipulate or control the weather. Someone can correct me on that. But I think they seed it with some type of aluminum or something. Google's going to probably have a much better answer than I do on that, though. All right, we got about half the class in. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this one. So when we're doing this, I'll leave the poll open if anybody is trying to answer here. Specifically asking, what is the wind shear forecast based upon this TAF here? If we were to read through this TAF, the main things is this is actually going to be located on the second line. So we can see here, this is your wind shear. And we've got 005 with the / and then 270 at 50 knots. So the main thing that we're looking at is, remember, 005 is basically going to be equivalent to 500 feet. So it definitely cannot be 5 and it can't be 50. It is 100% 500. So remember, when we are looking at these, here are your potential combinations depending on where that 5 sits. If the 5 was in between the zeros, that would be the equivalent of 5,000 feet. If it was at the beginning, that would be the equivalent of 50,000 feet, or the way we would say it is flight level 500. And then we have our direction, which is 270, and our velocity, which is 50 knots. So the correct answer here with 64% of the class is going to be C. The rest of it is kind of irrelevant based upon the information that it is asking for, so we can basically disregard it. Occasionally, you guys might see these types of questions on the exam. A lot of times, for the private pilot, they will reference the figure. So just like what you saw with the previous figures with the TAF and the METAR, they usually have it written down somewhere in the testing supplement. Occasionally, you might see it where they actually show it to you on the screen, just like this. It's just a different variation of how they're going to present the information. Okay. And then the WS is your wind shear portion of the forecast. But good job, everyone. All right, here is the next one on weather. Weather seemed to be an issue for some reason. So a pilot can expect a wind shear zone and a temperature inversion whenever the wind speed at 2,000 to 4,000 feet above the surface is at least, is it 10, 15, or 25 knots? Gilberto, in the last test question there, the 23-12-12, that was going to be, yep, 23rd day at, I got to see if there's a slash back there, but Let me double check while you guys are answering that. So the 23-12-12, it's basically the 23rd day, and the forecast is for 24 hours. It was from 1200 Zulu to 1200 Zulu the next day, it looks like. I got a little bit more than half the class in, just waiting for a few more people here. All right, taking a look at it, apologize if I cut off anybody here, but taking a look at it, we've got about 12% with A, 29% with B, and the majority of the class with C. The C's have it. It is going to be 25 knots, so it has to be at least 25 knots. Anytime that we're dealing with that increase of temperatures we discussed before, if there is, remember that we have this thing called the shear zone, and you can actually be fairly certain as the pilot that the shear zone in an inversion, if the pilot knows the wind is somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 feet, it's going to be 25 knots or more. Okay, so remember that slide that I showed you guys back in class a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, when we talked about weather. This is what we're talking about. So when we have a temperature inversion, or in this case, an inversion aloft, when we've got the weather somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 feet, we have the cooler air beneath it, the warmer air above with the shear zone, we can expect at least 25 knots or greater in one direction or the other, okay? All right, continuing on, this is something we didn't really have a chance to talk about, but I'm going to throw it up as well, just to make sure we all understand what the correct answer here. So, should it become necessary to hand prop an airplane engine, it is extremely important that a competent pilot is at A, call contact before touching the prop, B, be at the controls in the cockpit, or C, be at the cockpit and call out all commands. Thanks, Joel. Appreciate it. You can thank Travis. He's our IT guy. He's online as well. All right, got about 70% of the class in, just waiting for a few extra folks here. And about 5 more test questions after this, and then we'll open it up to whatever questions you may have. All right, let's take a look at it. We've got about 12% with A, 52% with B, and balance of class with C. The majority has it. What we're primarily looking for is B at the controls in the cockpit. So when we're looking at this, keep in mind that hand propping a plane is actually very dangerous for both parties. If you don't know what you're doing and you're the person who's actually in front, or if you're the person in the cockpit, it can be extremely important that there is someone at the controls, especially the braking, basically on those brakes as well. If those brakes slip, whoever is hand propping that plane is going to be in a world of hurt when we look at them. Okay, so obviously B is the correct answer. C, be in the cockpit and call out all commands. It's actually incorrect because the pilot must be in control of the aircraft, not only in the cockpit. That's the reason why they're being a little finicky with that. And then also the person propping the engine is the one who actually calls out the commands. Okay, it's the person in the front of the airplane that's calling it out. So B is correct there. So good job, everyone who got that. All right, continuing on, we're going to talk about your altitude and using your altimeter. So let me go ahead and open up this test question here. Altimeter setting is the value to which the barometric pressure scale of the altimeter is set so the altimeter indicates, is it A, absolute altitude at field elevation, B, calibrated altitude at field elevation, or C, true altitude at field elevation? All right, got about 60% of the class in so far. Got about 4 more questions after this. All right, let's take a look at it. We've got about 16% with A, 36 with B, and the balance majority of the class with C's. The C's actually have it. It is going to be true altitude at field elevation. So remember that the local altimeter setting corrects for the difference between existing pressure and standard atmospheric pressure. So whether local pressure is going to be higher or lower than standard, it will actually indicate true altitude, or MSL. Anytime that we're at ground level. When the aircraft altimeter is set to the local altimeter setting, assuming that there's no scale error when we talk about it. We had a few folks on B out there, so B is actually incorrect because the absolute altitude is basically your height above the ground, or AGL. If you guys remember this slide way back, right, 4 weeks ago, these are basically your different types of altitude. So the one that we're referencing here is this one, which is known as your true altitude. So this is your height above sea level, or MSL. The absolute altitude is going to be your height above the ground. So that's if you're to drop a pen from your airplane, how far will it actually fall before it hits the ground? That's your AGL. Your pressure altitude, which is basically what we've been talking about this last week here, is going to be the altitude that's indicated whenever the Colesman is going to be set to standard pressure of 29.92 inches of mercury. And then density altitude is your pressure altitude corrected for non-standard temperature and or pressure. Okay. All right. Continuing on with clouds here. Clouds are divided into 4 families according to their, is it A, outward shape, B, height range, or C, composition? You guys remember that we talked about this in the video that played last week. I apologize for anybody that actually wrote down all of those different cloud types. I was just joking. I was hoping you guys would figure that out in the first 10 seconds when they covered the first 100 clouds. So how are these things going to be divided? Outward shape, height range, or composition? Exactly, guys. Darren, Brent, at least you guys get it. All right, got about 70% of the class in, then we got 3 more after this. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. We've got 23% with A, the balance or majority of the class with B, sorry, 61%. And then, of course, everybody else is on composition C. Correct answer with majority of the class is going to be B. It is height range. So basically for identification purposes, remember that clouds are going to be divided into 4 different families. They are right here. We've got our high clouds, we have our middle clouds, and our low clouds. And then finally, the 4th version of that is going to be the clouds with extensive vertical development, which are the ones on the right-hand side. Those are your cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds that have they're usually fairly high and could actually occupy all 3 levels there. And then when we look at these, remember that the words strato, alto, and cirro are basically your indication in terms of where are those clouds sitting. Are they low? Are they middle? Are they high? Same thing with the nimbo when we look at those. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and look at another one, which is going to be fog. For some reason, fog has been a challenging one as well. What types of fog depend upon a wind in order to exist? Is it A, steam fog and downslope fog, B, precipitation-induced fog and ground fog, or C, advection fog and upslope fog? All right, got about half the class in. Joel, it is recorded, sir. So you can reference any of these when we go back to it or when we're done. They're usually going to be posted about an hour after we're done. All right, so we've got about 79% of the class with the correct answer, which is going to be C. This is advection fog and upslope fog are the ones that basically require wind. If we were to look at each one of these, remember that basically advection fog forms when moist air is going to move over colder ground or water, and then upslope fog is a result of moist, stable air being cooled adiabatically as it moves up the sloping terrain. So if you guys are more image friendly here, here's your advection fog at the top. So we have the wind, which is pushing warm, humid air inland in the winter, causing advection, which refers to the air moving horizontally. As the air blows over cold ground, it cools to the dew point and fog forms. And then this is known as advection fog, can cover wide areas of the central U.S. in the winter and also close airports. Upslope fog is where we have the wind that blows humid air up the hills or mountains. As the air rises, it cools to its dew point. Fog drifts up the hill. Widespread upslope fog is common on the plains where the land slopes gently upwards towards the Rockies. So those are your 2 types that basically rely upon wind there adiabatically. Thank you. All right, continuing on to the next FA test question. This is dealing with your Pitot-Static system and the errors that are basically involved within there. So if, while in level flight, it becomes necessary to use an alternate source of static pressure vented inside the airplane, which of the following variations in instrument indication should the pilot expect? Is it A, the altimeter will read lower than normal, airspeed lower than normal, and VSI will momentarily show a descent? B, the altimeter will read higher than normal, airspeed greater than normal, and the VSI will momentarily show a climb. Or C, the altimeter will read lower than normal, airspeed greater than normal, and the VSI will momentarily show a climb and then a descent. Got about half the class in. Oh, just waiting for a few other people here, a few stragglers. Yes, a lot of people guessing on this one are unsure. It definitely shows. Looking at it, we only had a single person with the correct answer here. So in the event you are pulling or basically utilizing your alternate static pressure inside the cockpit, what we would expect is going to be an altimeter that reads higher than normal, indicated airspeed greater than normal, and the VSI is going to show a momentary climb. Remember this figure that I gave you guys where in the event we had a static system block. This was just one version of it, and there's this handout that came within this lesson. So assuming that this was actually blocked, what we are primarily looking at is number 4 here. So your airspeed is going to read high, your altimeter is also going to read high, and then your VSI will show a momentary climb. Okay. So I promise you that you guys need to know these both for the written exam, and then also you should be familiar with all of these different potential combinations for your oral as well. Everybody gets asked these in the oral, and you will probably have to draw these out in terms of draw the diagram that you see on the left-hand side, even a simple one, and making sure that you understand how the system is connected and what ends up happening in the event that there is a blockage versus, whether it's a static port or if it's the ram air in the pitot tube or the drain hole in the pitot tube or both. Okay. All right. Continuing on to our last FAA test question here. Basically, this one should be a little bit easier. This is what we covered on Friday. A sloping cloud formation, an obscured horizon, and a dark scene spread with ground lights and stars can create an illusion known as, is it A, autokinesis, B, elevator illusions, or C, false horizons? Marisol, no, it's mainly just the pitot-static system. So you should understand what are some of the potential errors with the others, like precession with your heading indicator or DG, directional gyro, but you will be expected to go over your pitot-static system. That's pretty much always asked on the check rides. Are you got about half the class in? All right, let's take a look at it. We've got about 81% of the class with the correct answer. This is going to be dealing with false horizons. So if you guys remember, I'm kind of looking at this slide just a couple days ago, actually. This is what we mean by a false horizon. So whether it's a lit road or, whether it is really anything that's displaying something other than the real horizon and you try to line up with it, then it could be something like a sloping cloud deck. It could be an obscured horizon, the aurora borealis, dark scenes spread with ground lights and stars, and then also certain geometric patterns of ground lights that can actually provide inaccurate visual information or a false horizon. And then, of course, us as the pilot, we are going to try to align the aircraft with that instead of the real horizon. And that's what actually puts you into a potential hazardous attitude. Okay. All right. Well, those are all of the test questions that I had, and I will open it up and see if there's any questions that you guys had. I saw a couple at the very beginning of class. One of them was it gives you two different VORs, and the question was how do we figure out where the airplane is? And very simply, when we're looking at two different VORs, the main things is we need to know where the radials are. We don't even need to know the distance measuring equipment. I am going to use this one right here just because I don't have the VOR one up. So if you have two VORs and we knew that we were on let's assume we're off of the 240 radial. Okay. So if I draw a line straight out here, that is the 240 radial off of DFW. Okay. There might be another VOR, and we're going to call it something down here. I'm going to call this the ABC VOR in the corner. And this is going to be north. So wherever north is, we're going to call this the 360 degree radial off of my fictional VOR. And basically, all you would need to do is take your aviation plotter and draw the radials straight off of wherever the center of those VORs are. And wherever they basically cross, X marks the spot. And in that case, that's where your aircraft would be. And it's usually going to say something like it's over a certain city or a certain town, might be next to an airport, or it might be, let's say it's 6 miles away or 7 miles away from Dallas. Okay. Remember that you have on your aviation plotter, you actually have your scale on there. So that way you can actually measure how far away or how many nautical miles away it is. Okay. Let's see here. Can I show the last test question? Absolutely. That's an easy request there. Let me throw that one up here for you. That's the last test question. Brent, when it asks in what magnetic direction the plane is from the VOR, do you consider north is always up or use the north line from the VORs? So use the north line from the VORs. That compass rose that surrounds it is based off the magnetic compass. So you could actually utilize that and figure out, is it, in what direction or magnetic direction it is. Is this a feasible thing to do on the Checkride, or should we use pilotage? So for your Checkride, you're definitely going to be using dead reckoning. You're going to do your time, fuel, and distance information. You're going to fill all of that out, Randall, and then you always want to back it up with something else. I would encourage you to actually use as many types of navigation as you can. So number one, you're obviously going to have your dead reckoning, your nice little document or sheet that you normally have. Then you can always, use a combination of pilotage, GPS, or other types of radio navigation like VORs, whatever you have on board. And that's going to be basically giving you your best your best option. Okay. You always want to back up whatever you're doing with something else. Okay. Any other questions here? Remember, the course does close unless you're a lifetime member on Wednesday. We will close it just before midnight. So you guys have plenty of time. And I'm just going through to see if we missed any other questions. This is recorded. Give us about 30, 40 minutes and it'll be up on the website here, the event you missed it. The The last couple of questions that I would are basically, I guess my 2 cents is at this point, don't necessarily review every single video. I would stay focused on the quizzes and anything that's really a deficiency, like it's going to be a problem. A lot of people, it's usually going to be weather, performance, flight planning, and aerodynamics. Those are kind of the hot button issues that we usually see quite frequently. Go back through those quizzes and making sure that you're getting 90s in all of those, right? And then also retaking the final exam. I've seen it come across my desk plenty of times in the last couple of days. One individual took it 6 different times, even though they were getting in the high 80s and 90s. So it doesn't hurt to take it more. So that way you will actually go across or basically be able to see more of the test questions rather than just limiting yourself to just, 60 of them. Okay. The course will close at midnight at Pacific time. That is correct. Then we'll go ahead and pull it offline. So that's kind of your deadline there. If you are a lifetime member, ignore that though. You're welcome from Bangladesh out there. I don't know what time is it there, Ollie. If we're slowly phasing out the VORs, when will we stop relying upon them? So Marisol, it's a great question. We are phasing out the VORs, but not in their entirety. If you take our instrument class, you're going to find out that there are specific ground-based navigation systems like VORs that are basically designated or part of an airport. We call those MON airports, which is minimal operational network. So in the event the GPS system failed for whatever reason, pilots would actually go to a MON airport in order to execute some type of approach to get on the ground. So they're not going to be disappearing anytime soon. They are reducing the number that they have, so just keep that in mind. 6:02 in the morning. Wow. Do we get to keep the highest scores? So Kelly, you actually, in our program, you have access to all of the scores. So as long as you get it at least once, the system's going to recognize it. If you get a 90 and then a 68, you still have your endorsement, but I would encourage you to keep taking it. For the purpose of the FAA exam, it's whatever the last score that you received. If you got a 90% and then said, hey, I want to retake it in 30 days from now, and for whatever reason, you got a 68, you're going to be stuck with whatever the last score is for the FAA. They're a little harsher. So will flight instructors teach in 2-seat experimental or home-built aircraft? So certain instructors will, and I have to go look at the requirements for that, Van. Most of us will usually just teach in the standard training aircraft, and then we migrate over. There's some requirement for those, and I'd honestly have to go look and see what it is. I don't have it off the top of my head here. If you shoot me an email, I can look it up for you, or I can challenge Alex, who's going to be taking his CFI here pretty soon, to see if he can give you an answer while I'm answering the other ones. Let's see. Any other questions that I missed here? How would you suggest we practice on making flight plans part of? Okay, so Brent's asking a good question. How do you practice a flight plan? And very simply, just go out and pull the weather, just like we did, or you can use an existing weather packet and grab your POH or other information. And just literally go look at SkyVector, or you guys should have some type of physical chart at this point. Go pull two airports you've never been to, never heard of, and try to do a flight plan from point A to point B, however that is. That's usually what we do with our CFI students. Is I just give them random airports, and what I try to do is, we're based in the LA area. Most of us have probably seen an LA sectional for the last couple of years. I actually go out and try to find like Montana sectionals, Oregon sectionals, places where they haven't been to before, to try to give them a little bit more of a challenge. So I would encourage you to, even look at other locations to see how you can kind of best challenge yourself. And then, the more times that you basically go through that process of the flight planning and putting it together, grabbing the weather and everything else, it will become a lot faster over time. Okay. Let's see. Posted a couple questions above. Let's see. Did I get that one, Brent? Was there another question that I may have missed there? Also, using the plotter to get the angles of route where you spin the wheel or use the one wheel. All right, so if you guys are having trouble basically plotting whatever your true course should be, this is what I would recommend for you. Go to skyvector.com. I will throw it up here. First off, you're going to need your own chart. So whatever chart you have, let's just assume you guys all have I don't know, LA sectional charts. So if you go to skyvector.com, and I'll squeeze this over on this page right here. So whatever chart you have, try to just plan a route. Doesn't really matter what it is. So if I just plug in, we are going to go from Camarillo. Let's see, and let's go to Lima. Was it 45 is Big Bear? Nope, it's not going to work. Lima 35 maybe. Okay, there's Big Bear. So what I would encourage you to do, this is not how I would flight plan, but just if you want some basic practice in terms of figuring out the, how to kind of use your plotter, go ahead and make a course like this. Okay, plot it out on your actual physical chart, your paper chart, whatever it is. And all you're going to do is click on your nav log here, and it's actually going to compute for you what the true course should be. So if you guys see this, let's see here. We have your true course, which is basically going to be your track in this case, which is 115. You could then attempt to do this yourself, and then you could use this as an answer sheet, because this is going to be more accurate than, obviously trying to figure it out. So that's how I would do it, is just kind of go up and down and try different angles and those types of things. Plot the same thing on SkyVector or one of these electronic flight bag things. Make sure you print out a nav log, and then from that point you could basically compare your original answers and also compare against what the system is telling you, because these are going to be correct. Okay, you got the New York sectional, perfect. So that works as well. Does that answer your question in terms of, for those that are having trouble with the, like Brent said, basically using your aviation plotter and figuring out the true course? All right, there you go. Compass deviations. All right, let's go up there. Catherine, I think I saw it at the very, very beginning here. Let me see if I can pull that back up. Oh, let's see. Catherine, you're gonna have to throw that in. It only lets me see the last 100 messages in the chat, unfortunately. If you could throw that in, that would be awesome. Favorite aviation author for textbooks is still Rod Machado. That's the reason why we basically paired our course with this. But I read a lot of other books as well. I like history and those types of things. So the one that I like is Hard Landing. If you guys like airline stuff, it's kind of an interesting one in terms of how the airlines were born and the different personalities that revolved around the big four when they were starting up in the 20s all the way through, I think, the 60s. Let's see here. Michael, maybe a stupid question, but there are still places that you can just go up and wander around. No flight plan. You're not required to have a flight plan at all, Michael. So if you guys just want to go up and fly, there's no requirement to have a flight plan. Typically, we do this on, cross countries or something along those lines. And the reality is once you guys are licensed pilots, you'll use an electronic flight bag and you can go create a flight plan that's, to another airport 300 nautical miles away in 5 minutes. It doesn't take that long. So it is wise to have something to basically fall back on with a flight plan, but there's no legal requirement that you do it, nor is there a legal requirement that you actually are on flight following. But that's, once again, something I would encourage you to, always be on. All right, referring to VOR receiver number 1 shown to the right. Oh, this is a question. Okay. So, Catherine, do you have the figure number that's associated with that question? Unfortunately, with the question number, it doesn't. They're jumbled. If I try to pull that up, it's going to give me. It's not going to give me the same question, unfortunately. Let me see if I can find it real quick here for you, though. All right, hopefully that answered the question there. You're welcome, Michael. What heading should you fly to intercept and track inbound on the 060 degree course at the 40 degree course at the 40 degree intercept angle? From figure 15. Okay, I can grab that. That's a little easier to grab. All right, let's take a look at it. So this is Rod Machado figure 15. And this is inside of the Rod Machado book. Is that what you're referencing? Let's see if we can find it here. I don't have Rod Machado's figures, so it's not something I can put on the screen for everybody, but K10, thank you. If you have Rod Machado's book, you can look on, I guess, Kilo 10. All right, so on K10, this is going to be figure, let's see, depart Coward Airport. See if I can grab this here for you guys, referring to VOR number 1. All right, let me see if I can do this. Gilberto, we are on chapter page K10. It's chapter 11. So chapter 11, if you're following along. All right, let's see if we can come up with something here. A little harder than I thought to go ahead and try to find this because there is no actual test question. When I look at the book, right, it's a number of figures and those types of things. I'm just trying to find the right one. So you're very welcome, Michael. We'll see you again, sir. We are done. If anybody else does not have any more test questions or anything like that, if you want to stick around and hang out, that's perfectly fine as well. All right, so I am just going to pull up the last presentation that we did for radio navigation. I think I have a similar slide to this. Page does not show the right image. Yeah, that's the thing. Textbook figure number 30. Let me go a little bit further back then. Yeah, figure 30 for me is actually a GPS figure where it's telling me how to avoid restricted areas, unfortunately. So it's a little bit different than I think the question that you're asking for. They're in the final exam for Rod Machado. So I'm not sure what the final exam is, Catherine. The only final exam that we have is actually our version of the final exam. That's not actually pulled from the Rod Machado text. That's something that we put together. And like I said, if it's question 21 for you, it's going to be question 5 for someone else, or it may not even make it onto someone else's exam because of the fact that it does it. Okay, there we go. Figure 30 of the testing supplement. I can work with that. All right, let's look at figure 30. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so figure 30, and let me bring this up so everybody can see figure 30, and then we'll look at the test question here for you. Appreciate it. I know it's hard to get the terminology between all the different books and stuff that we have, so let's pull this up. All right, here is figure 30, you said? Tell me if this is correct. So the course, oh my gosh. So the course companion, this is figure 28 in the FAA testing supplement. So the problem is that we're talking about two different things. The course companion, I'd have to pull that one up as well. That is pulling from something else as well, because that uses several different resources. Referring to the VOR receiver number 1, showing to the right, what heading should you fly to intercept and track an inbound on the 060 degree course at a 40 degree intercept angle? Yeah, I'm sorry, Catherine. I do not have that in front of me. I wish I did. If you could take a screenshot of it and if you just want to shoot me an email, I'll be happy to answer it as long as I have the right information of where to look. Unfortunately, we do not, I don't have that right in front of me. I'm sorry. If Travis can get that to me, I'm happy to look at it. I just don't have it right this second. Apologize. All right. Any other questions? We'll get to you, Catherine. I promise. Perfect. And email it to me with whatever the original test question was. I'll walk you through it step by step. That's easy enough. I think once we have the right information and we figure out what the source is, then it should be a no-brainer. So thanks again. Any other questions out there? I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I also want to give you guys an opportunity if you have any last minute questions or concerns to address them. Figure 34, and I'm assuming we are talking about this book, or are you talking about the Rod Machado book? Chapter 10 in the Rod Machado book. So chapter 10, figure 34 is dealing with a military airport, and the double circle is just what it says. So the double circle basically indicates that it has a hard surface runway. So that's there's nothing more to it than that. The blue comb that you guys see on the right hand side of figure 34 is just some type of either could be restricted or it could be a military operations area. We would not know. Okay. All right, you're very welcome, Van. Yes, these are pre-recorded, so don't worry. You will be able to watch this at any point in time. You are correct there. All right, let's do this. What we're going to do is if you still have any more questions, you can feel free to just shoot us an email and give us the actual reference, or if you guys want to take a screenshot of it, it's easier to explain it there. But so determining the moment for the applicable category. So it's in the airplane weight and balance chart, page 405 of the course companion. Thank you, Catherine. If you guys can take a screenshot of it and send it to me, I'll be happy to go over it with you guys and just get back to you today. But most of these, I was expecting the FAA test questions. These are a little bit more challenging in the actual textbook here to pull them out in time. All right, 405 of the course companion. We'll write that down. Catherine, just shoot me an email and I'll explain that to you. Nico, do me a favor and do the exact same thing as well. Okay. No worry, Kelly. It's all recorded. So. Question, if a true heading of 135 degrees results in a ground track of 130 degrees and a true airspeed of 135 results in a ground speed of 140 knots, the wind would be from. So this is where we go on to the E6B and you could basically plug in the known information. So remember the correct order that we basically have. So a couple things that we do know is that we have a ground speed of 140. Let's see here. And it's basically just asking us, where is the wind from? Okay. So if you break out your E6B, what we do have is we know that the grommet should be under 140 knots. So I'm going to kind of back into the question a little bit, and I'm going to put my grommet at 140. And then the other component that I also know is that we have a true heading of 135. And the main question, the main thing we can't figure out is where is the wind direction and the velocity, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to put in 135 at the top underneath the true index. And from this point, then we also kind of need to figure out it is 5 degrees off from your ground track. Okay. So when we look at this, remember that if it's to the right, then we are basically going to add the value. If it's right of center, then we're going to add the value. If it's left of center, then we have to subtract it. So in this case, because our true heading was 135 and it's giving us a ground track of 130, we know that the wind is going to be coming from the left-hand side of the airplane. And then we'd have to look at whatever the potential answers are for that set, Joe. Michael, there's still one going on until May 31st for the Memorial Day sale. You could take a look at that on the website, sir. That make sense? Any questions on that, Joe? So basically, if you guys remember like college algebra or anything else, we're just trying to solve for X. And one of the very first things that we're always trying to do is, what are our known values and what do we know and what do we not know? And the main thing is we don't know where the wind direction or velocity is coming from. So 1 and 2 are things that we're trying to solve for. What we do know is that in this case, we do have a ground speed based upon that question that was given. And the ground speed is 140 knots. So what I would do is I would make sure that this grommet right here is basically at 140. That would basically be step number 1 by working this problem. So if I slide this down to 140 right there, I know that. The other component based upon the question that you gave me was that we had a true heading of 135. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 135 at the top. There's a buck 35 right there. Okay. And then we have a true airspeed of 135. So what that's telling me is that somewhere over here, and it should be, the dot should be right about there. That is where the wind is coming from. Okay, because because your true airspeed is 5 knots less than your ground speed. That's telling me that you actually have a tailwind. Okay. The other thing that I know based upon the question you gave was the true heading was 135, but the ground track was 130. So that means it's going to be over here on the left of center rather than the right of center because I'm actually subtracting 5 instead of adding 5. Okay. So if I were to basically bring this back and try to get that red dot to the center here, just like that, that's basically telling me that the wind is coming from roughly around 022, 023. And then you'd have to figure out and match up whatever the closest answer to that is. So once you're comfortable basically, going through the problem using the 1 through 6 like we do in class, and then it's just a matter of trying to figure out your known and unknown values. And in this case, we're basically working the problem backwards. Okay. That makes sense, Kelly? So Kelly, what we had was we basically had some known values such as a true airspeed, a ground speed, ground track, and then also a 135 degrees. Okay. Yeah, that's not what I got. So unless there's something missing from that question up there. So, because if it was, they're telling us that it's 246, right? So 246, we'll do it this way real quick. So let's do it as if we know the answer. And this is another way of doing it. If you guys know what the potential answers are, you could just treat it like this and see if you guys can do this. So if we've got 246, okay. So here is 246. And then you're telling me it's going to be at 13 knots. So here's 110. Zoom in a little bit. There's about 113 right there. And then going back to the original question, we have a true heading of 135. So here is 135. And then what was the last part of this? Then we also know that the true airspeed is 135 as well. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to move this red dot to 135. Oops, without moving that though. So basically going to move this up to there. And there's our ground speed of 140. Actually, it was to the right. So it's to the right plus 5 because it is to the right. And let's see, the difference from the ground track of 130 and the heading of 135. That makes sense. I was subtracting it. So I was actually putting the dot over here, but it's actually on the right-hand side because we're adding it from the original value. So we're trying to maintain a ground track of 130, but we have to maintain a heading of, I guess, 135. So in this case, the wind, because this is where our airplane is right here, the wind is basically a right quartering tailwind off kind of the back right side of the airplane. Thank you, Alex. Does that make sense? If it was me and it was my test, I would actually just try each one of the numbers. Backing into it, there's a lot of potential mistakes. You guys saw me already make one because I was trying to subtract it rather than add it. But if you guys go through that process with the known values and see which one works and which one doesn't, the main thing is it's giving you the ground speed. So if the grommet doesn't give you, if whatever the speed is underneath the grommet is not accurate to the question, so let's assume it came out as like 155 for the ground speed right here, then we know that that answer is not going to be correct, right? If it gave us 130 for another one, that one's not going to be correct. There's only going to be one that should basically be 140, okay? Thanks, Travis. Appreciate it. All right, going back to whoever's question that was, I think it was Catherine, or Kelly. Let me see. Catherine, question 21 and 22. Very simply, 21 and 22 are no longer, they're no longer testable questions, okay? So what they refer to specifically is going to be an ADF, an automatic direction finder. We don't actually teach it. And you can actually disregard that question. I'll pull it up just so you guys can kind of see what it looks like here. So the one that she's referencing is from the old version. It's the stage 3 exam from the Rod Machado book. But you guys no longer have to deal with it. That makes that very easy. Let me open this guy up real quick so I can show everybody and download it. But yep, you no longer have to deal with those. They stopped doing these horrible questions back in the early 2000s. So the one that she was referencing was right here. It's basically 21, where we are referring to, there's a couple of them here. There's actually 21 and 22. 22 is definitely a no-go. Referring to the ADF and the DG above, determine the magnetic bearing from the station. You guys are not required to do these questions. They removed them, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago at this point. Okay. So, mic drop. Yep. So you can disregard those for yourself. Okay. So one less thing to worry about. All right. Any other questions out there before we go? Nada. Okay. All right, everyone. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe out there. If there was something that we weren't able to get to, shoot us an email. Happy to answer any of the others. And then at this point, remember that the course will close out at midnight, about 11:59 p.m. our time on this coming Wednesday. If you guys are going to be joining us for the instrument class, we look forward to seeing you. Keep in touch, though. Let us know how you're doing through the Facebook group. And let us know if there's anything else that we can help out with. All right. I'll leave the chat open for a couple minutes, let you guys close out any last minute conversations. But I do appreciate you guys hanging out. And this video will be posted in about an hour or so. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a safe weekend, and we'll see you guys later.